Welcome to the Shane Show. I'm Shane Connick. Today we're going to bring in another very special guest. This person is a lead radio play-by-play broadcaster of the Brooklyn Nets on WFAN Sports Radio 66, in addition to being one of the main voices of the NFL on Compass Media Network's radio. He's announced the Olympics before on NBC Sports. He's announced college football on ESPN and much more throughout his career. An alumnus of Fordham University, Mr. Chris Carrino. Chris, welcome to the Shane Show. Thank you for coming on today.
Hey, Shane. How are you?
Doing well as I could. How about you? What have you been up to?
I don't know. A few things going on in the world, but getting ready to go back to work, which after a nice lengthy hiatus is a welcome distraction.
Sure, it has to be, especially with the Nets starting up, as we talked about on the show yesterday about how you're going to be still broadcasting the Nets, but from Barclays Center, from an empty Barclays Center off a scoreboard instead of in Orlando with the team where they're playing, which will definitely be a change, but better than nothing.
Yeah. No, we're just glad to have basketball back. I think it will give the country something to focus on.
So speaking of the Nets, something I asked Capper about was about if he was a Nets fan growing up and if that impacts him now. But talking to you now specifically, I know that maybe not with the Nets, but I know that you are a Yankees fan your whole life. And I know that in 2012, Compass Media had you call a few Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim games when the team was on the East Coast against the Yankees and against other teams. And one of the series that you were announcing was against the Yankees. Were there any moments during that series where even if you were trying to be objective, it was just hard?
It's funny you say that because there was one particular instance I remember. I had done 5 games, and a couple of them were at Yankee Stadium, which was an incredible thrill for me. But I specifically remember this was that Mark Teixeira hits a 3-run home run at a key moment in the game. And I got very excited. And my producer back in the studio in California got in my ear and just kind of gently reminded me who I was working for. And I remember they were like, I remember you're the Angels broadcaster right now. I mean, I was doing it for a national. It was a group of nationally broadcast games, but it was sort of like this Angels network that they were experimenting with. So it wasn't like I was in, like the people in LA were listening, but so I knew it, I was sort of playing it objectively. I wasn't doing a homerish kind of broadcast for the Angels, but at the same time, I did get very excited for that Mark Teixeira home run, and I was reminded about it, but it was fine. It was good.
Now, in your life, you've always been a broadcaster. In college, you announced a lot of games for WFUV. You worked with legendary broadcaster Marty Glickman at Fordham University. And before that, when was it that you kind of realized that broadcasting was what you wanted to do?
I was probably around 11 years old, I think it was. My dad gave me a tape recorder and said, just have fun, record your voice, whatever, be creative with it. And I was such a huge sports fan. I was the type of kid who knew, 10 years old, I could tell you who played every position in the major leagues. Like the older kids in my neighborhood used to, test me. And I was like a circus act, So what I did with this tape recorder is I would go into my parents' bedroom where it was quiet. I would turn the sound down on games and I would broadcast the games. I would do play-by-play of these games into my tape recorder. But I then that's where it started for me. I mean, that's where it all started. And then, going through high school, I was in competitive speech and debate, and I knew communicating with people was going to be the thing I was good at. It was going to be something I wanted to make my living at. And then when I went to college and met Marty Glickman, I realized that I had a chance to do sports play-by-play and be a sports broadcaster, but I didn't really know what that entailed until Marty taught us. And I kind of broke it down, forgot everything I thought I knew, and learned new from Marty, and it served me well.
And so another thing about yourself outside of broadcasting that most Nets fans know, and a lot of people know about you, is that you have Facioscapulohumeral Muscular Dystrophy, commonly known as FSHD, and it causes progressive weakening of the muscles. Now, I know it was a little bit when you were in college, a little bit after that, when you started to really have that epiphany that this was something that you had. You can read all about this disease and read all about it, but for you exactly when you realized this was something that you had, what was that like for you?
It's at first I probably lived for years knowing that there was something that wasn't right, but you only go through life once. You only have your one body. You don't. There's nothing I can compare when I turned 20. It's not like I can compare it to another life that I lived when I was 20 and know that this is different. So I just think this is what being 20 is. I didn't have it in my family. I didn't know anything about it. But then there's certain things like I would fall or my bicep was getting very thin, and you worry that there could be something wrong. So went to a doctor, and the first time they tell you, you have muscular dystrophy, um, you don't know what to think. I mean, you don't think that could ever possibly happen. But once you're over the initial shock, you ask, well, what can I do? And unfortunately, with this disease, there's no treatment, there's no cure. So in this case, I just said, I'm going to just do what I can do. I'm not going to let this stop me from doing anything else that I've done, that I had set out to accomplish in my life. Um, and I really didn't know the severity. I didn't, it's a gradual thing. So it gradually takes over your body as you go along in your life. It's gotten to a point in the last 10 years where it was not something I could hide anymore. I need a lot more help to do certain things, and a lot of the everyday things I do are much more taxing. But at the time, it just gradually hits you. So I was able to sort of, I don't want to say bury my head in the sand, but and ignore it. But I just wasn't going to let it stop me. And I think even what I've learned is as I get older and it does get harder to do things, and I do need more assistance. And I've been starting to use assisted devices to get around at times. Um, it still doesn't have to stop you. It's still, you can still find a way to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish in your life. You just may have to do them a little differently. Sometimes it takes a little more planning logistically. But at the same time, you know, being a person and having dreams and utilizing your talents are something that anyone can do, whether or not they're impacted physically, financially, spiritually, mentally, whatever it may be. Um, that's the message that I've learned in living nearly 3 decades with this disease.
Now, you started off an article that you wrote in the post game with that one of your greatest memories as a child was being 10 years old and broadcasting the World Series in your parents' bedroom into a tape recorder that no one would hear than you. And then, the next thing you know, in 2002, 22 years later, you're in Staples Center in Los Angeles announcing the NBA Finals on WOR radio. Now, and then you said, and somewhere in between, I was diagnosed with FSHD. Is it real, when you look at your overall career, and I really like the way you worded it there, did it really just feel like it was such a small moment when you look at the overall bigger picture and the way it impacted you at the end of the day, because you were still able to do other things that you were doing? Obviously, it was harder, but.
I think, probably the way I wrote that was for dramatic effect, and it did have dramatic effect. But I do think that I did sort of just treat it like a speed bump early on. You slow down a little bit, check it out, go over it carefully, and then move on. But then it's like a speed bump. In the road, it's a reminder to stick to the speed limit. So, I think you have to be realistic with something like I was going through. Okay, if I wanted to play center field for the Yankees, that probably wasn't a realistic expectation anymore. But if I wanted to be a broadcaster, that was still something that could be on my radar. So I'm not going to let this stop me from doing that. I don't think I ever took it lightly, but I'm one of those people that you talk about how large our world is, our universe. We are such a small part of it. And each individual feels that the world revolves around you, but it doesn't in your own mind and in your own body. I mean, it does. You're a physical being. You have to deal with that each and every day. Um, so it's always on my mind. I mean, having FSHD is something that I am reminded of from the minute I try and get out of bed in the morning. And I'm reminded of it and think about it every moment of the day. Um, so but what I don't like to, but I don't think anybody else, um, they care, but it's really not their concern. When they're around me, they may think about it, they may be more sensitive to it, but so that the outside world doesn't stop for you. So I think that's what I meant by, all right, here's what I've done. This is what everybody sees. And yes, in somewhere in there, I've had to deal with this, but that's my concern. That's not your concern. I appreciate if you're concerned. And then with my foundation, I appreciate if you want to help me and get involved. And if there's things I need to do, but I also know that I'm not your responsibility. And, so I think that's more of where, and I don't let the disease define me. I don't have to make it the center of my conversation, everything I do. But at the same time, the way I've been able to deal with it, the way I've been able to handle it, the way I approach it, my attitude about it is is a part of me. It's what defines me as a person. So the two are kind of are connected and inseparable. And I think that you can't control a lot of things, but you can control your attitude toward things, and that's what I try to do.
And also, you're talking about drawing awareness toward it, and you touched on your foundation, the Chris Carrino Foundation. In what ways has that been able to help draw awareness over the years? And I know we saw the Nets actually have they had a bicycle, people ride on bikes with the police escort from the Brooklyn Bridge to the Barclays Center, I believe.
Well, that was actually it was an event that a group of people who uh, came together to help us with the foundation. It was not a Nets event, but it actually started in Seattle. So those bikers rode all the way from Seattle, and then when they got to New York, from the Brooklyn Bridge, Kenny Atkinson joined them. A bunch of other people joined them, and we set up the finish line at Barclays Center. So they started at the Space Needle and ended up at Barclays Center. And it's an example of how I've used my name and my position to make people aware of what FSHD does. And awareness does a couple of things. Awareness helps you with your mission, and our mission is to help people with FSHD. And you do this by, we fund research. So when people are aware of your plight, then you can reach people who want to help you. And a lot of people can help you financially. And then we take that money and we give it to researchers. Another part of it is letting people who may be diagnosed with FSHD or having symptoms, doctors who don't know much about it, when they get to know what it is, then it can help people with their treatment and getting diagnosed. And I'll give you an example. Just recently, I had a person reach out to me whose 7-year-old nephew had been diagnosed and knew nothing about it. And he was able to just go on our website and send me an email. And then we had a phone conversation. So they went from the beginning of the week knowing absolutely nothing about FSHD to a week later knowing everything about it, and how now they can move forward, and their son can move on and his nephew can move on. with how they're going to approach this the rest of their life. So, that's part of awareness, and that's what we try and do. And I think the more people if you need something, if you um, need help with something, you ask for it and hope that the right person hears you. And I think by telling my story, by having the foundation, that's what I've tried to do. And the people that are close to me in my life have tried to do. It's raise our hand, ask people for help, and hope that the right people hear you.
That's great to hear. And also, during the times we're in right now, there are tough times for everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what you do. You obviously have experience with tough times that have been specific to you. You delivered a message that the Brooklyn Nets posted on their social media pages a few months ago,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a motivational type message you gave. In what ways did you think that message was going to really, because I thought it was a very powerful message personally, but
Thank you.
what ways did you think that did it really resonate with you, the pandemic, what was going on and what happened in your life?
I go through my life, and like I said, I'm consumed by it. So I'm always trying to figure out ways to do things differently, more efficiently. How can I accomplish the things I want to accomplish going through what I'm going through and the challenges that I face? And it was my partner, Tim Cabstraw, and my partner on the radio, who is a guy that always has a way of inspiring me and getting me going. And not only that, knowing that I always have somebody I can rely on for help. It was Tim who said to me, the world right now is experiencing what you go through every day. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, all of a sudden people can't do things that they used to do easily. The world has gotten inconvenient for people. And you know firsthand what it's like for the world to be inconvenient. And he's like, I think the world needs a little pep talk. You should give everybody a little perspective right now. Do a little video, give them some perspective. And that's what I did. I grabbed my computer. I had done something that was very long form and epic in scope. And my wife looked at it and said, "No, that's not what I think you're looking for here. I think that's you need to be a little more to the point and give people some hope here. What they need to do to help them through this." And so I just threw something together again right after that, and I'm glad people enjoyed it. I'm glad people that got something out of it. Um, it's it's important as human beings that if you have something to say that can help other people, that you do it. I'm not saying that I do that perfectly all the time. I'm not saying that I don't get frustrated. I don't say that I share every little bit of my life, but at the same time, if I could offer some perspective and something good can come out of what I go through for other people, then I think everyone in the world should strive for that.
Chris, always great to hear from you and always great to hear you tell your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate it. Good luck to you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this edition of The Shane Show. See you next time. Catch you on the flip side.